Hey everyone, it's Fox from Model Making Guru here, and welcome back to part 6 of our build of the 1/60th scale no grade Strike Gundam. As you can see, we're back on with the inner frame parts. If you recall, we painted all these in Mr. Metal Colour Iron, and it's given this nice sort of dark metallic sheen. I repainted that one piece that I tried brush painting. Still dropping stuff. I repainted that with the airbrush, and it looks much better now. It doesn't look like ass, basically. So my lesson there, if you're doing anything big, best to airbrush it, not to brush it. So what are we going to start with today? Well, for starters, what we're going to do is start adding some accents and different colours to these metallic inner parts. Let me just show you an original ankle. This is the ankle part. And you can see it looks really nice in the iron, but it needs something else. So the other thing it has is this. These little accent colours on the screw heads, the pistons, and this tubing. For this I've just used Mr. Metal Chrome Silver and used the same technique, stick it on, buff it off, but this has been brush painted. So I'm going to start with that today and show you how to do that. Now I'm going to have to wear my mask and have the extractor fan on because, like I said before, the paint is horrible, it stinks, it's not pleasant, you'll get massive headaches, it's really toxic stuff, lacquer paints. So I'll have to dub over. So I'll try and speak through the mask, and then if it just sounds terrible, I'll dub over it. Okay, right, all the painting has been done. Now, I did film the painting. Unfortunately, as is always the case when I'm trying to do small detail painting, it was unusable because I couldn't get close enough to the thing to paint it because the camera's in the way and half the film got corrupted. So yeah. So anyway, all the bits have now been painted. So it's time to get these buffed off. You've seen me buff it before, but we'll give it a go. One thing I've started using, or I'm experimenting with, is cotton balls. Cotton balls. They don't actually glow like this. This is just the lighting in my room. I just like to think these give a bit of a smoother finish sometimes than the cotton buds, because with cotton buds you've got the risk of the plastic tube scraping the paint. So let's give this a go. So this is the painted part. I applied the paint with my Citadel layer brush. Now I debated whether to use the Artificer brush, which is smaller. But I've often found when you're painting fine detail parts, using the smallest possible brush is not always the best bet, because then you get lots of stripes and strokes from the brush. Sometimes using a slightly bigger brush gives you a bit more of an even surface. So it's that size brush. Now I've got to get it back in the tube now, hang on. Stay on target. There you go. Right. So let's give this a buff. It's at about 20 minutes. So I'm just going to go in. The reason I was using these cotton balls is because I can push down on them to get the nice shine, but I'm not risking the plastic tube of a cotton bud. Now it doesn't always give you exactly the same kind of shine, and sometimes you need to go back in with the cotton bud anyway. But as before, we just brush this on. I wasn't too worried if I got any rough edges here and there, because we'll be doing some kind of wash on this to put stuff into the recesses, so it's not the end of the world if there's a few rough spots. Okay, so you can see that just starting to take on its shine. Hopefully. I might have to go onto these tubes with the cotton bud because I can't really get in there with my thumb or finger. I forgot those bits. God damn it. I'll have to go back and do those again. Or do them. Let's go in with the cotton bud, it might be easier. For these tubes at least. So as before, we're just going to buff gently. Get the cotton bud on there. Go buff-tacular on its ass. Not going heavy. Little circular motions. Just buffalating. It's kind of relaxing doing this, but it can take a while and it can get quite tedious. When I was doing all the inner frame parts, it got really actually quite tedious because I was hunched over doing it to get the best light, and therefore it just got really uncomfortable on my back and I got kind of bored. So yeah, it is a downside, this. That's them. Give them a quick dibble. Give that a quick zizz. I do find you get the best and shiniest finishes from airbrushing it though. Brushing it can be handy for little details like this, but I do find you get the best finish from airbrushing. And I tend to leave it about 15 to 20 minutes after brushing it on, just because the paint's going to be thicker than if I'd airbrushed it, so I don't want to start doing this and suddenly find I'm taking all the paint off, because that would suck right royally. Okay, so let's see how that comes out. Pretty good. Probably got a bit more work to do on there, but I like the fact it's got this slight tarnish look in the middle. It's not all just super shiny chrome, which is not the effect I'm after anyway. It's got to look like it's been used. So yeah, I need to go off and paint those bits. Duh! Forgot to paint those. So let me go off and buff the rest. I'll just do a quick, let me find one with a vent on it. I didn't do on the legs, I didn't do these vents in the end, because I realised that this whole part is exposed. And I'd need to make sure I got a perfectly straight line, so I thought I'll leave them dark. But I did do these little things here. These are quite hard to buff, bizarrely. So I just did the tops with the chrome silver, just so it has a bit of sparkle to it when you see it sticking out from under the armour. And there will be washes and things going over these to give some depth, so do. And that's it. Just means it stands out. You might be able to see on camera, it stands out a little bit from the background, from the dark iron colour. So we'll see how that comes out when it's all assembled. I did these things on the arms as well. Give them a quick tickle. But right, so I'll go and get the rest of these done. What is next? When we come back after I've finished these, I'm not sure what the next step is. Okay, right. I have just gloss varnished all the cockpit parts. I was going to show that, but I just did a quick bit of dry brushing and stuff, so I couldn't really film it because it was close at work. So we're going to jump ahead instead, while that's drying, to start some of the chipping. And I'm going to show you chipping on the red parts first. Now, it's not going to be massively heavily weathered, this kit, but we're going to do weathering on it. It would make sense to do some. I don't do clean models, as you know. So, what we're going to do, we're going to simulate, you've seen me do it before, we're going to simulate paint chipping. We're going to brush the chipping on. Now, for the red parts, what I want to simulate is the chips on the red paint showing either undercoat or rusty metal underneath. So what I'm going to use is two different colours. One is a slightly lighter red, more pinkish colour, to suggest where the paint has flaked off and clean paint underneath has been exposed. That hasn't been weathered as much as the paint on the surface, so it's going to be a lighter colour. This will make sense when you see it. So for that, we're just going to use some standard Tamiya. You can't really see it. Tamiya flat red, XF something or other, with a little bit of white mixed in. So let's start this ball rolling. So I'm going to use my Citadel Artificer, which I always use for all my artificing, as you know. And all we're going to do is go on and paint some really subtle little chips. You don't need much paint on the brush at all. And we're going to concentrate on areas where paint would be worn away, so edges. And we're just going to, quite simply, paint some chips on. Now, I always say the best way to imagine paint chips is imagine how big someone's head would be. Because paint chips aren't generally very large, and they're not really bigger than your hand, so to see some paint chips the size of someone's upper body or something would be kind of ridiculous. So we're just going in, you can see here we're just being really subtle, tiny little dots, not thinking too much. I'm trying to keep it kind of random. Now, because this is a bigger model, when I did my Sinanju Stein, I kind of got a bit carried away and it looked a bit silly, really. But because this is a smaller scale model, so basically a bigger model, it means the paint chips I'm going to paint are going to be more in scale and realistic. Well, realistic I suppose is not maybe too generous a word, but they're going to look more natural and the right size. So I'm just trying to be kind of random. I'm going to get the paint from the lid because then I can twist the brush. I've added some thinner to this paint so it's thinner than normal If you know Tamiya paints, you know they're quite thick. I'm going to do some scrapes. For a scrape, we'll just very lightly touch the brush to the surface and drag it. And that's probably a bit thicker than I planned. And you might be thinking pink's a strange colour. It's just, I found sometimes to get really interesting chipping effects, if you're going whole hog, sometimes just use a lighter shade of the base colour and then something else underneath to suggest, you know, undercoat or bare metal or whatever you want to do. It just adds that little bit extra. So again, I want to keep it random if I can. I'm keeping in the back of my mind as well that I'm going to be doing some washes and things to get into the recessed areas, so I don't need to worry too much about going into recessed areas because they'll get hidden. So we've got a little bit of subtle chipping around these little raised edges. And this is all we're really doing. Just marking edges. Not every single edge, obviously. Some will have a little bit of chipping, some will have lots. We'll see if we can do a scrape. You've got to be really light. That's too heavy. It's not really what I was after. The brush is giving me some jip today. Let's try. And sometimes a scrape can be a line, or a scrape can be a series of little chips that are obviously, when you see them as a whole, a straight line of chips, but they're all broken up. Let's try one. Let's try one here. Let's see if I can do it without screwing it up. There we go. So it could be a very thin line. If you're struggling with a thin line, get yourself a really fine brush. What you'll find with most brushes is they tend to take on a flat shape. So one side will be fat like here, and this side will be flat, even if it's a pointy, rounded brush. Use that flat edge. Don't use it like this. Use it like, so if it's hard to explain. Imagine it's a chisel shape. Use the thinnest profile to make your line. And this is all I'm going to do. Now what I will do is I'll do the same chipping effect on the whites, obviously. It's going to take a long time to do this. This is the slow and relaxing part of making models. It's going to take a long time, so I'll do a similar thing on the whites, but I'll use like a grey colour, or I may use a brown colour, like a rusty brown chip. We'll see. On the other reds I'll use this pink, obviously. And I'll do a few chips here and there in the middle of nowhere, because you never know. But I won't do too many. So I'll use a brown or a grey tone on the whites, and I'll let you know when I've done it. On the dark greys I'll use a lighter grey. On the blue I'll use a lighter blue. We're not going to be doing any on the metallics. And then when I've done all those, I'll come back with the second colour, which will be either to suggest an undercoat underneath this paint, or it'll be to suggest bare metal or rusty bare metal. So let me go off and finish this first initial coat on this foot, and then when I come back I'll do the second colour. So I'll go and put a podcast on, and when we come back we'll do the second stage. Back in a moment. Wait, stop the presses. Yeah, totally forgot. I need to do the decals before I do the chipping. Hello! So I haven't done the second load of chipping yet. I am going to do the gloss varnish on all the armour parts, and then we'll get the decals on, then we'll do the chipping. Do you know when you're getting carried away? So I've got everything ready. I've done a little bit of masking on the body, a bit of masking fluid here, and some tape here and here. This is because I want these parts to be chrome silver later on, the Mr. Metal colour, so I don't want to cover them in gloss varnish and everything else. I want them to be rough to give the best results so the paint sticks to the paint. So I've masked those parts off. I've got all the rest of the armour and the head and everything else ready to go, so let's get them gloss varnished, and then I guess we'll do decals. Wow, I don't plan these things at all. Right, so that's everything gloss varnished, and while everything is drying, I'm going to take our leaf out of Helgen 35's book, my good friend Tony, McPony Fairclough, and do something else while that's drying, because I tend to do a thing, leave it to dry, and then just don't do anything, because I'm lazy. So, while that's drying, I'm going to sort out the Cockpit. This was gloss varnished earlier. It's dead simple, 3 pieces, cockpit cabin, boxed thing, pilot seat, and the pilot, who I've already painted. Yeah, not brilliant paintwork, but yeah, my old man eyes. So all I'm going to do to this, it's been gloss varnished. All I'm going to do is add a quick wash, just to give some depth, because you're not actually going to see this, and it's inside anyway, and you know, so I'm making the effort to paint it, but I'm not making it a work of art, because you won't see it. Even if it's open, it's going to be in darkness. So for this, I'm not going to use anything like oils or enamels. I'm just going to use a dead straightforward, simple, ultimate modelling wash. It's just earth. It's basically just water and clay and probably some other bits and bobs. So if I can find the right brush, we'll give this a go. So all we're going to do is, to start with, we will do a little bit of the wash on there. And this is the same principle as any other wash, but it's water based, so it's a lot easier to remove and it dries very, very quickly. So dead simple, I'm just going to quite simply slap it on. You know how I work. Let me just make sure you're in focus. There. Now, the only downside with this stuff is you have to shake it vigorously to make sure it's all mixed properly. When you shake it vigorously, it just goes all foamy. So you have to kind of wiggle around a bit to get something that isn't just foam. But yeah, it's just water based, so what we'll do is we're going to put this on, then we'll leave it for about 5 or 10 minutes just to dry. Once it's dry enough, we'll just take it off with a cotton bud. Damp or dry, whichever you prefer. Now, like any other wash, this will give you different results depending on what it's going on to. If it goes on to bare plastic, say you're not painting your Gunpla, then it might go a bit beady and go into little balls. If you do it onto a gloss varnish like this, it's like any other wash. It hopefully should just, when you rub it off, just remain in the recesses and come out of everywhere else. Because the surface is smooth. And if you put it onto a matte varnish surface, because that's rough, you may well find that that is harder to take off, so it will remain in the edges and it'll remain in the little pits and bits of the surface, because a matte varnish surface is basically just slightly rougher than gloss. It's got those little tiny microscopic pits like an orange peel, so it might tint and stain the surface that you've washed a bit more. So it depends what result you want. These have been gloss varnish because I want it just to really catch in. I'm going to stick that on there. I want it to catch in the recesses, but I want to kind of expose the... Do you know, if I knock the camera once more... I'm having a very disorganised day today, can you tell? All this episode so far has been filmed throughout one day and I'm not doing a good job of it. So let's let this dry, and when we come back we'll take that off. Back in a minute. Right, okay, this has had a little while to dry, long enough for me to eat an enormous sausage dinner from the local Chinese chippy. Oh, I have the fatness now. I have a maximum fatness. I may do a big burp at some point. Right, so you can see it is now brown. It's covered in what looks like mud. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves some cottoning buds, and this couldn't be easier. Take this stuff off. I'm just going to use a dry cotton bud first of all, and see what happens. If it doesn't get off enough, I have to say that again in English, if it doesn't get off enough, I'll go in with a little bit of moisture. But let's just see what happens if I do it dry and if I do it on camera. Which would also be good, yeah, it would be good. I don't have to worry too much about the actual seat because he's going to be sat in there, so you ain't going to see that anyhow. But you can see here, it's just coming off quite nicely on the silver parts. It's just coming away and leaving the silver parts a bit cleaner. Now it's still pretty grubby. I don't want it to look filthy dirty. I just want it to look like it's got some shading. So what I'm going to do, I hate doing this, but get it on my tongue, get some moisture on it, and just rub it like that. So it's only clay and water, it's not toxic. Not going to kill you or nothing like that. We'll get some off this grey. I'll get a fresh one. There, I hate the feel of cotton bud on my tongue. It's gross. It's the worst. But you can see it makes short work of the grunge. Hopefully you can see. And it just leaves us with a nice textured chair. Just stays in all the little recesses, so you've got a little bit of detail there. And again, bear in mind to say this is going to be inside the cockpit and it's going to be dark. You're not really going to see this, so really, unless you are lighting the cockpit, and I don't do lighting, you don't need to worry too much about it being super best paint job in the world, because it's going to be very hard to see it anyway. But I'd rather do something than nothing. So that's going to do for the chair. And then for the cockpit, again, you're not going to, on camera, you won't see any of this, but we'll just do these outside bits. Let's just see if we can change the lighting a little bit. It's better. I've got cotton bud threads in my gob. Now if I do this dry, you can see now it gives this wonderful texture. This was dry brush with Tamiya chrome silver and then gloss varnish. There's still a little bit of texture to the surface, and I'm loving this bit here where it's kind of caught in this edge. And I don't know if you'll see it on camera, but there's like the brown is in the middle of it, but on the edges it's just bare chrome silver, so it looks like it's kind of weathered away on the edges. So I'm tempted to leave that. Well, it's actually a bit rusty, so I won't. But I'm only doing it very lightly on this bit, because you can see it just leaves this wonderful... Oh look, there's a nub! Madre mia! Oh, this far in the build and I left a nub. God damn it. Yes, apologies for the overexposure. Let me just stop my hand glowing. There, that's better. Look at that, there's a nub right there. Little tinker. Nearly swore then. Because I never swear on camera. Yeah, that's bollocks. So again, you're not really going to see the interior at all. Really. Let's just be honest. Cotton buds. So I'm not too fussed if it's quite dark in there. It's dark in there anyway. And you can't actually see it on camera. So that will do nicely. It just gives a bit of relief. A bit of grunge and dirt. And it just makes it look more interesting, basically. So, let us now construct the Cockpit and Gefahrten. So we have the pilot on the seat. It goes there like this, you see. I'm going to get him in with the... Oh, you could just fall out, that's just as good. We'll get him on the seat, squish him in with the cotton bud, so I don't chip any of his paint. I think he's in. Not quite, he's not in quite right. Do you know? Get in your chair. Near enough. No, he's not sitting straight, is he? It's annoying. He refuses to sit straight in his chair. Have a gosh. It's odd. I don't think it's a mismold. I think maybe I've bent the little thing. Oh well, never mind. He's in. So that's teeny tiny Kira Yamato in his pilot seat. So he simply needs to go in there like that, you'll see. And then somehow I've got to push the two things on the back of the chair into the back there, somehow. In this small enclosed space. I don't feel confident he's in. I'm not super confident he's inserted correctly, but he's in and he's jammed in there and he ain't going nowhere. So I'll just give it one last little tick around the old area. And there we have it. There is the impossible for you to see because it's so dark cockpit. Let's bring it closer, you can see better. And now you see why I'm not too fussed about going super detailed with the cockpit, because when he's in the thing and there's got an overhang here, and all you're going to see is this part here. Yeah, I'd rather paint him than not paint him. And I know I painted his seatbelt the wrong colour. It should be a kind of blue colour, but you know what? To me, seatbelts are leather. I think when I'm painting like pilot seats and stuff, I always want to paint them brown, because I always think everybody has nice leather seats in their vehicles. I know it's not the truth. So that's that done. So I will put that to one side, cockpit done. Back in a moment. I've got cotton bud threads in my gob.